Welcome to the We Are Libertarians book club. I am Hody Johns, and I'm here with Hadley. How's it going, buddy?
Pretty good, Hody. How are you?
Doing awesome, man. Doing awesome. It's just you and me today, it looks like. We may get some joiners later. But I am totally okay with that because we got to talk about Catcher in the Rye. And anytime we talk about classic literature, I waffled between majoring in theology or English, and specifically literature. And I opted to go with theology, but I took a bunch of courses on classic literature before then, and I could talk forever about it. But classic in the Catcher in the Rye is a classic, and really an enjoyable read. I think a lot of times classic literature, they do such a good job with the artistry that you're like, well, it's very artistic. I see how it was hard to do and it was complex, but it really wasn't fun. Whereas I think Catcher in the Rye is just so fun. Even if there's symbolism on every single page. I mean, you flip any page, you'd be like, there's symbolism going on. Even if you miss every single symbolic point, you're still going to have an enjoyable read. Yeah. I don't know. Did you have fun reading it?
Oh, I did. Absolutely. And as I alluded before we even came on, I did just finalize it today, but it was an easy read. I really did enjoy it. It was kind of weird being stuck in Holden's head the whole time. Mm-hmm. So that was a different point of view than I think I've read in quite a while. And my background is not maybe as strong as yours in theology and or reading, but no, I thought it was amazing. I can't believe I skipped it probably when I was on a reading list back in high school. But it's maybe one of those that I might run through again because it was an easy read and I really enjoyed it.
And the most of the time it gets skipped is actually because it gets censored. This is, I believe, the most censored book in all of the public school curriculum. There are more public schools that boycott this book than any other book. I think it's pretty obvious even on the first couple pages. There's a lot of swearing. There's controversy. There's some... I guess at one point, he hires a prostitute, doesn't go through with it. It's very early on. It's very offensive. But I think the funny part is the same people that have a problem with his swearing and his I guess, teenage angst and just being edgy for the sake of trying to be edgy. It kind of missed the point of the book where it's like, yeah, those are kind of not great quality traits, to have. And I think that's one of those that's, I find that it's self-defeating for censorship. Let's before we dive right into the book, what are your feelings on it being censored or what do you think? Or about censorship in general? I actually can't hear you right now. I think I hear you now.
You can hear me now. Okay.
I hear you now. Go ahead.
All right. Censorship in general. Well, I think a lot of people take things too seriously, especially with Catcher in the Rye. I mean, I guess I can understand some parents are going to say, "Oh, I don't want my kids reading where he's swearing," and I don't think it wasn't. I guess I'm maybe not, or desensitized a little bit to it. I don't think it was that bad. But I guess I could get that where if you have adolescents, you don't want them to be corrupted by it. But I think people take it way too seriously. And I'm not quite sure because I know that it had been censored and I thought like it was going to be worse. Like I was always waiting for some other turn to happen where, I don't know, somebody got killed or something happened where he did something. And sorry for the noise.
Oh, you're fine. You got a family.
Yeah. So I really don't understand why many books are ever censored. I think, and you guys have brought this up in the big show and the dailies, a lot of times if you censor something or make it so it's not accessible, people want it more.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really make sense to me, but no, I kind of went off a little bit there. But.
No, I asked you to go off on it. The book was read famously by the guy who shot John Lennon and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre guy. Both had the book as like inspirations behind why they did what they did. I can't fathom where they get that from the book. I genuinely can't. There, like you said, there's not even death in it. Like there's no murder. There's I guess there's death of his brother that occurs before the book even happens, 3 years prior, which is touching. He's sentimental towards it, but it's certainly not a good feeling you get about it. So it's weird that somebody would kill John Lennon in the name of Holden Caulfield. It's very bizarre. And I think that probably lends something to the censorship because, there were famous killings and somebody's like, Catcher in the Rye is why I did it.
Yeah, everybody, you can find any little thing. People have used the Bible, Quran, whatever.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, you can find some passage in a book and say, ooh, this speaks to me, and it made me kill all these people. Like, no, you're just a little tweaked in the head automatically, so you find something wherever you want to. So, that's a good point. I never realized that history, that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and John Lennon's murderer used Catcher in the Rye there.
Yeah. And J.D. Salinger, became a hermit after the book. He doesn't talk about it. So there's some points. Let's see. There's two books in the literature discourse, as far as I know, in the standard curriculum. Back when the AP list was still going around, there were two books where the meaning wasn't clear, and one of them was Catcher in the Rye, and the other was Hamlet. And other than that, people kind of have clear meanings. Now, I think there's absolutely clear topics in Catcher in the Rye. If I might be so bold, I would definitely propose that there is a meaning that I feel like I know the meaning to Catcher in the Rye, and it's definitely not what the murderers seem to think it is. But it doesn't help that the author kind of went silent afterwards, largely because of people. I think he even cited misinterpretation of his book, for people just kind of wanted to make it theirs, and he didn't want to deal with it. Right. Which is really too bad, because I think it's one of the great books in American history for sure. So let's talk about the book. There's so much to talk about. I guess let's talk about big moments in the book. What you thought was a very impactful moment, or section of the book. Mm-hmm. I think for me, I'm even going to start early in the book, but I think it's very clear he's bugged by phoniness. That's definitely an ongoing topic. He pretty much thinks everybody's inauthentic except for him. Very close, except for and he's very protective of people that he does think are authentic or very innocent or young kids. Jane Gallagher is somebody he considers an authentic person. That's why he's so mad when his roommate may or may not have made out with her, because he hates his roommate, thinks he's inauthentic. And then his little sister at the end, when she's having fun riding on the carousel. I guess a big moment for me then is the end. Now, this is one of those endings where people disagree on what happened. He doesn't say. It's generally assumed, and I agree with the literary consensus, I guess, that he went to a loony bin, that he had a mental breakdown. Mm-hmm. Some people think he went to jail. He talks about how he sat on a bench in the rain for a long time after the carousel was over, and just kind of, got lost in his own head for a bit, went home, something happened, and then he talks about, I can't wait till I get out of here next month.
Right.
Now, I'm talking about both the beginning and the end of the book as my big moments, but I think the reason that's important is because this was a journey for Holden Caulfield, and it starts with him getting kicked out of school. And you want this journey home, which is actually where he's supposed to be going, right? He's supposed to be going home, but it actually ends with him in the loony bin. And so I think for me, the reason that's such a big moment is it's used as a literary tactic to be this is a direction you think that's going to lead you home, the direction that Holden's on, and actually leads you to utter madness. So I think for me, that framing element causes me to look at the whole story and just say, what happened? Like, what was the problem with your trajectory that instead of something that should have taken you home took you to a madhouse? And I think that's such a brilliant framing element. There's so many other things to talk about within it and the little stories that happen within that I'm sure we'll get to. But I think for me, that framing element is too brilliant to pass up on. How about you? Big moments, big sections.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I think that is a big aspect. The big moments, I think, were some of the larger deaths in his past around him. His younger brother, I think, obviously, that he had a huge impact that he never really digested and moved on from. Obviously, he's in the book. He writes the essay for his roommate, who later then punches him in the face. And that is about his little brother's baseball mitt and the details to it. He can still remember it, in his head vividly in the poems. And then the other one that shocked me was and you see this because he sees like young adolescent, so young teenager, and the other kid that got that wasn't phony and called some kid out, and then they went into his room. The 4 or 5 guys were giving it to him or whatever, and he ended up jumping out the window and died that way. And I didn't see that coming, that one there specifically, and that kind of like you kind of kept settling in of like, how much, I guess, anger and you can understand the depression that he had. Obviously, just kept feeding more and more, and the Salinger kept giving you little nuggets as to why that was there. It didn't give it all up front, so I don't know if there's one or two big things, but I think you'd mentioned the end. I did think the end was nice of how it was his sister's. So he kind of had this thing with younger children, and I think it was almost transitioned into adulthood that it's innocence loss. And, people become more and more phony as they get older. And his sister wanting to leave with him obviously shook him. And then also her still being a child and getting on the carousel and riding it twice. And that's where he's sitting there watching it in the rain, and it didn't affect him because he was just, happy and not depressed at that moment. So I think that kind of settled it right at the end there, which was really kind of a big moment for me on that. And then I'm trying to think I don't know, there's a lot of really great, even for only having 220 pages, there's a lot of great little nuggets along the way. even he's talking the whole time about like as if he's good with girls, and it sounds like for a minute like, oh, he's had sex multiple times, and then he's like, well, I have to admit I'm a virgin. And then he tries to get a prostitute, and the prostitute comes in, and then he can't have sex with her, so he's like, well, let me just talk to you. And so there's a lot of moments that kind of strike you.
Oh man, you brought up a million different things that I would talk about forever. The mitt from his little brother who passed away, that his little brother wrote poems on it, right? Yeah. So that because while he was in the outfield, he didn't like paying attention to baseball, and so he liked reading the poems on the glove, right? And this is there's so many great symbols in the book, and that's one of them, because Holden absolutely idolizes that glove. He goes back for it. That's one of the possessions. He's like, hey, I'm going back for the glove. When one of the roommates plays like keep away with it for like a split second, he like gets very violent. He's like, no, this glove is huge in my life. Obviously writes the essay about it, and he's flunking out of school, so it's like, well, why are you writing an essay? And so obviously whatever he writes is going to be very genuine, and he chooses to write about that glove. But he idolizes it, and it's and the symbol of that by saying, here's something functional, the glove, it's supposed to be used for baseball. Well, I'm going to write poems all over it so that I'm like distracted. And Holden has very much embraced that distraction in his real life to say, well, I think because of his love for his little brother, he sees something that he's supposed to be doing, and he's just going to keep himself distracted with something else. It's sad because it's like he feels, and I can see where he gets it, that anything else would be like crapping on the memory of his younger brother. But it's something that as a reader, you're like, dude, you got to move past this. You have to engage in one conversation in your real life. Like you have to engage in a real conversation with somebody. The very end, you talked about that. He talks about the ring, how the kids reach for the ring. And for a moment, and this is kind of like rock climbing, you know, for a moment you can fall unless you make sure you have a good hold, you know, and he talks about the ring that they have to reach for when they're climbing up on the horse on the merry-go-round. And how he says you have to let them reach, you know, at some point you can't help them. They have to reach. And I think that's really what causes his, I guess what I believe is a mental breakdown. You know, what causes him to go insane is that he's like, oh yeah, of course you got to let him reach. At some point, kids got to be able to reach and grab for the ring on their own. And I think that's when he has this, well, I think I'd say has the realization, except I think it's a mental breakdown because he can't handle the realization that eventually kids got to grow up. You know, like you gotta grow up, you gotta move on. And he's in a place where he's absolutely unable to move on. Let's see here. You brought up something else. I don't remember those are just such powerful symbols, and they are so. I think in all of American literature, those are some of the most powerful. Let me add one more symbol, I guess, while we're talking about symbol piles. The very beginning, his brother DB writes. He's a famous Hollywood writer now, which means he must be phony. Right. And it's sad because his brother clearly cares about him. His brother's the one picking him up from the loony bin. His brother visits him like writes him every day, visits him weekly. You know, he's like the one person there for him. And he wrote a book that got famous, which Holden dismisses, called The Secret Goldfish. And Holden at the beginning gives us like a brief synopsis of it. He talks about how it's about a kid who paid for a goldfish with his own money, so he doesn't want anybody else to see it. So he paints the tank so that nobody can see the goldfish, paints over the tank. This is a simple Holden. This book is about Holden. And he doesn't realize that his brother basically wrote a best-selling book about him. How ironic that Holden Caulfield gets two books, Catcher in the Rye and The Secret Goldfish, about him that he doesn't know are about him. You know, it's, you know, because here's the thing: is you think you're painting somebody else out, right? He paints out his teacher who cares about him at the beginning, who has the grip. Very genuine person with him. I'll talk about that later because I'm yammering. But he paints over something because he thinks he's keeping everybody else out. And what's he really doing? He's painting himself in. You know, when you paint over a goldfish tank, yeah, you've punished other people from seeing the goldfish. You also punish the goldfish very substantially, right? The goldfish doesn't get to see out either. So it's kind of that two-way street. You think you're painting people out, but you're really painting yourself in. You know, and this is I'm just going to throw that symbol onto the pile as well.
Because I did not catch that the first time around, but now that you bring it up, it's like, wow, yeah, obviously makes complete sense on that end. So thanks for bringing that up. Oh yeah,
this may be, I think, my third time reading the book. I love it. It is yeah. And I love symbolism just as a device. I think it's funny because kids, when they're younger, like hate symbolism, but I think that's just because they're forced to write essays about it. But I think as I get older, I'm just like, oh, that is such a good symbol for what's going on. And so maybe this is probably why this is one of my favorite books, since there's like one on every page. Again, at the beginning, he talks about everybody being phony because he's there. So it's a revolutionary memorial, right? He's got the cannons, the old 1776 cannons at the beginning of the football game. And he's like, oh, look at everybody here is phony. They're here to watch a football game. But what's he doing? He's checking out girls. It's like, well, yeah, like you're at a place where there's a very real thing that occurred. You're calling them phony, and many of them are. You know, I don't want to dismiss every time Holden calls somebody phony, because many of them are. But he's being disingenuous as well. You know what I mean?
As well, yeah, absolutely.
And that's just another one of those. Anyhow, I don't know. I asked the last question. What do you want to talk about?
Oh boy. Well, I think I had mentioned prior to us coming on. Did it have the same impact for you that you had to almost put the book down because it started given you actually physical anxiety reading from that first person, and everything that Holden's going through. I mean, maybe because I jammed through so much of it at one point in time, you're kind of engaged in it. But I don't know if it had any physical effects on you as well.
I read through it in 3 days myself. It's so short. I think it's too bad that more of the book club was like, oh, Catcher in the Rye, something my teacher made me to read. Maybe I won't read this one. But it's so short, and it really, for me, it comes across like reading a Twitter account. Like I said earlier, it's very top of the mind sounding. It's funny that he's such a good writer, Salinger, is because he manages to cram like a symbol on every page on there, right, because it really doesn't come off that way. Like he's just spouting, he's just, and so I guess the read for me might have been a little bit easier, although maybe that's because I lack the empathy because I look at it through like a literary point of view. Because I mean, if you want to talk about teenage angst, nobody's touching Holden on this one. Right. He has it in spades. You definitely, I think you feel so bad for him. And then at the same time, you're like, dude, but you don't see like what a jerk you're being sometimes. Like, he'll accuse somebody else of doing something. And so maybe I'm a little too judgmental towards Holden. And so maybe it was a little easier to read because I didn't love him maybe as much as I should have. Of course I care about him and I feel bad for him, but I think maybe I could have empathized a little bit better. I think for me, I look at his, I guess to answer your question, I think maybe not because I'm turned off by his whole calling everybody phony thing. And it's funny because he'll call everybody phony, but then he hates genuine interaction. And that is so reoccurring throughout the book. His teacher at the beginning who has the grip, and he's totally sick, could just stay at home and be sick. But what does he do? He actually wants to talk to Holden, sends a note, was like, hey, come see me. I want to talk to you. Tries to put his life on the right track and like wishes him good luck. And Holden's like, oh, I hate this whole thing sucks. Like, I can't believe a teacher would do that. What a terrible thing to do to me.
Right.
Without realizing it's like, this might be one of the least phony people you've met in your life. And there's nothing less phony than that guy's sickness, right? He sees a lot of genuine interactions, like his runny nose or him being there in a bathrobe because everything's too hot, right? And then he's like, oh, gross. I wish he wouldn't sit there in a bathrobe. I wish he wouldn't, pick his nose in front of me. Like, but those are genuine things. When you have, like, you either want one or the other. And I think Holden doesn't realize at this point that he has to choose. He wants people to be genuine in their interactions with him, but he also doesn't want to see anybody pick his nose. Well, when you pick your nose, you have something up there. That's a very human thing to do, And so when people act genuine with him, he's got that second teacher that's one of the, I guess, people don't quite understand what's going on in that book, whether the second teacher is a pedophile.
Yeah, that was kind of creepy.
Right. He wakes up and the teacher's patting his head, right? And it's creepy, but it's probably genuine. You know what I mean? Like, I don't read into that as pedophilia. I think the teacher's going through some stuff himself I think Holden is putting a lot of things on other people, and I think that teacher is in turn putting things onto Holden. Right. But I think, I guess for me, to answer your question, maybe I wasn't as anxious as I could have been because I was just saying, man, this guy has so many things to fix. I kind of wanted to be a part of his life because I wanted to be like a doctor or a psychologist to be like, dude, do you see what you're doing right now? Like you're pushing away everybody who's genuine with you, and yet and so of course you're surrounded by phonies because anybody who's had a real response with you, like, there's nothing more phony than paying a person, the prostitute, right? This is the whole motif of the prostitute. You pay a prostitute to have sex with you, and then you expect her to wax poetic. Like you guys want to talk, and he wants to have a real relationship with this prostitute. Well, the whole thing is predicated on him giving her money for sex, right? So it's never going to be genuine. It's not a genuine interaction. It was not founded on anything genuine. No. The whole thing is meant to be artificial. The reason you hire a prostitute is to be artificial. And so he is struggling because he's like, that wasn't a genuine interaction either. Well, of course it wasn't. You paid for a prostitute. Anyhow, but let's talk about, why don't you go off for a bit about why, like the things that made you anxious and maybe your more empathetic approach.
Yeah, and maybe you said this is your third time through. Maybe if I another time or two through, you get past that. But I almost felt bad. Like I understood, like he was a jerk absolutely. But it was almost like you could feel like I just started feeling that angst that he had inside of him, and it was almost like he kept putting up this defensive shield by calling everybody else a phony and so on and so forth, and also trying not to have those close relationships. And then I didn't know if it was so coming back that he still didn't digest the death of his younger brother because he was so close with him. So now he didn't want to get close to anybody else. And I guess the only other person was his younger sister, Phoebe. But he also just, I think, wanted to keep her a little child. But, I guess part of it is, growing up, there was times that I had gone through and I had anxiety or other aspects like that. So I guess that kind of brought me back to almost a teenage years at sometimes where you're going from that childhood, being naive per se. And as you go through adolescence and you're growing up, you start to see the world in different lens. And sometimes you don't like what you see. And maybe it's not what the world is, it's how you're going to perceive it. And you have to go through that. Mm-hmm. So part of it for me was just getting in there, and then it just seemed like just crap was happening. And I just saw him going down this tunnel of like, you got to get yourself together. And part of it was probably me waiting again for something really bad to happen. Nothing really bad happened, but it just seemed like he was going down that road of something really bad was going to happen. But no, I think he also did. You brought up the teacher, the second teacher towards the end that pat him on the head while you're sitting in the dark on the ground next to him. He had mentioned, and I don't know, again, like you kind of take everything that Holden says grain of salt, because is it true or not? Because he also seems to be a pathological liar at times. Mm-hmm. Like tells people these stories, grand stories, and kind of go off, which will make me jump back to one of the parts that had me laughing for a little while. But with this teacher, he said it wasn't the first time that he felt like he was around a pervy situation, or however he worded it. It's like it happened 12, 14. So then I'm like, well, what other situations has he had with adults as a child that maybe makes him even more pissed off at the world and grossed out by it? So that was kind of weird. And then I did love, you found out pretty early on that the kid was pretty intelligent. When he got on the train and he's talking to the mother of one of the kids that goes to the school, and he's like laying it on thick. I'm like, wow, man, this kid is good. And that's before, you didn't even realize that he really hasn't ever hooked up with any girls at all. But he's, offering her a light, a cigarette, lights it for her, says we should go get a drink. And he just sounds suave as hell for like a 15-year-old kid or whatever he was at that point in time. Yeah. So I thought that was, reading through that interaction for a couple of pages had me laughing a couple of times, some of the shit that was coming out of his mouth. But yeah.
Yeah. So that interaction particularly is one that kind of reveals how, like you were talking about how kind of phony he is. Well, he'll turn into like Rico Suavo all of a sudden and be like, so he's talking about how this girl was captured by what he had to say. Now she rejects him straight up. And it's like, oh yeah, she gives him a fake excuse to get out of there. She's not interested in him. The funny thing is he thinks he says, oh, I got her in the palm of my hand, because all you have to do is talk about how great people's kids are, and right, they'll think you're amazing. And so he's like, oh, has he told you? And he makes up some stories about her kid since he goes to school with him. He hates the kid.
Right.
So he starts telling these fake stories. She immediately knows it's not true. And so she's turned off immediately. She's just like, whatever. It's funny because at first she engages him, and then he's like, oh, let's, yeah. And he thinks he's working his magic, right? He's like, oh yeah, I'm telling her how great her kid is. Thing is, she knows her son better than he does, obviously. Right. And so she is painfully aware when he's lying. He isn't aware that he's being caught in a lie. And so he continues to go on, and then and she's like, yeah, anyhow, I definitely have to go. And he's like, oh, you don't want to get drinks or something? She's like, yeah, I definitely don't want to get drinks. No. And he's like, oh yeah, well, obviously she was busy because she totally would have done me. And it's like, oh, bro, you weren't even close. You know, like you were messing that up pretty bad. He is a relatable character. And the funny thing is, I think in this chat, and I think in the book, he's gone through a few extreme things: the death of a brother, maybe a pervy situation with an adult. It's hard because this is one of those where, because you're reading through his eyes, the eyes of a chronic liar, he will even say, because it's dealt like he's talking with you about it. And he's like, I don't really want to talk about that, so we're not going to talk about it. And you know, and I was drunk at the time, so I kind of don't really remember, but I think I remember this. It's like, well, how much do I trust you then? Right. So you really want to know about his pervy situation with an adult. Was it pervy, or was he projecting again? Right. You know, it is so hard to know. You know, I think the pervy situation may have been before his brother died, so it might be like maybe that lends some genuineness to it, because it does seem like maybe something in him broke after that. And so if that happened beforehand, then maybe there's another thing that's stunting him, that's holding him back, especially sexually. And so I don't mean to sound like, and I don't want to treat this as evangelism either. Like, you shouldn't be sympathetic to him. He's a literary device, damn it. You know, like, I mean, it's written through his perspective for a good reason. And that's so that you relate, because I think in many ways, yes, we'll not all have brothers that die. We'll not all have stunted growths or pervy situations. Mm-hmm. But we all will go through this journey. Right. From being a kid that's happy, that's riding a carousel, that's having fun. A kid that is goofy and maybe writes something on their baseball glove because they're forced to go to baseball. And I think everybody's been doing that. I didn't really become genuinely interested in sports until after I was 10, but my parents had been like forcing me to try since I was like 5, you know? And when I was 5, it was not fun. So I absolutely relate to I would, oh my gosh, write something on my glove to think about instead of actually playing baseball. Absolutely. And so you go from this journey. We all go from this journey from being these kids to being this adult. Now you talk about loss of innocence, and that is probably the biggest, even more than the phony thing, much to my reluctance, because the phony is my favorite thing to discuss. But that's probably the biggest theme of the book, is this going from childhood to adulthood. And Holden, of course, is stuck in between. His name, he's held, right? He can't progress. He's stunted. And so he is wanted, and he thinks he wants to, but then he gets into a time where he could have sex, and he elects to hold hands. This isn't even the prostitute. This is like what that early girl, I guess not even girlfriend, that date he goes on, right? Mm-hmm. He loves her. They're totally into each other. He has a moment, and he uses it to hold hands, and he's like, oh, I'm so glad we did that, because I totally would have ruined it would have wrecked it if we had sex. Whereas I think an adult is like, well, that could be like the completion of your relationship. That could be like the next step. I'm not trying to project like immorality, but I think it's clear that that Holden doesn't even care about, he calls himself an atheist. He doesn't care, So you would say, well, if you don't have that if you don't have Christianity holding you back, then go ahead and take the next point in your relationship. But it's clear that he doesn't want that. He only wants sex from somebody he doesn't care about, or you know what I mean? If it's somebody that he loves and he thinks is authentic, he thinks having sex would ruin it. Right. He'll mess it all up. Right. And I think there's at some point, and we can call it loss of innocence. I really love the symbol of like reaching for the ring. For me, maybe this is, you know what? Let's talk about this next. I have a tough time talking about loss of innocence anytime, because I think for me, I can't point to a time in my life where I'm like, this is where it all wrecked. I think it is a slow process. Mm-hmm. I think there's many things that lead to it. And I'm not sure if you ever really, and I'm not trying to get like Catholic here, but I where I'm saying like, we're born sinners or born pure or whatever it is. I'm just not sure you ever really have it. I think you just encounter you are born not knowing anything. You have a series of realizations. I think sometimes people tell you that everything's good. But I think if you teach a child from the age they can talk that bad stuff happens, I think loss of innocence kind of happens right there. You know what I mean? Like, I get that sometimes that we teach our kids about Santa Claus and you grow up and find out that Santa Claus isn't real. But I just don't see that as much different from losing other innocence where you're like, I thought the world was great, versus parents that are like from the beginning are like, yeah, there's no Santa Claus. You know what I mean? Like, I think for me, it's just a process of realization. And so I have a tough time talking about loss of innocence and maybe it's just because I haven't gone on that journey myself. I mean, I absolutely have grown up. I've had more realizations. But I think people would, especially people my age, they talk about like, oh, September 11th just opened everything for me. And I'm just like, I don't know, like it is a cataclysmic evil on the par of which I hadn't seen before, but I guess I always knew it could happen. So, you know, I mean, I've seen one plane crash before. So the fact that 4 hijackers did it on the same day, it's a bad day. But I don't know if it's like, this is my loss of innocence. This is where I realize I don't know. What are your thoughts on loss of innocence? And you, I mean, you can use the book as a backdrop if you want, but I have a tough time talking about it.
Right. I think loss of innocence, I don't think, I mean, you can't, maybe one event can kind of push you to an extent.
Yeah.
But I think it's a slow transition. And maybe with specifically this book, he couldn't get over it. Or some people can't, like they can't go from childhood into adulthood and make that leap. Or maybe, you know, because you see some kids that are like, and I've known them, you probably know them, 13, 14, 15 years old. I mean, they got their shit together. They know what they're doing. They know where we're going. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just trying to see what people are doing later on to hang out. So it's all different, but I think it's a long change. Cause I think when a kid, yeah, you can understand death, you understand birth, you understand bad things happen. But I think when you start becoming more and more aware of the larger world around you, and how much you don't have control of things, maybe that's where there's that kind of growing up of maturation of, wow, you know, and maybe some people never get this, but you're not really in control. I mean, you have some control of your life. You can determine what you want to do and where you want to go. But there's a lot of events that you have no control over, and you just have to understand that, hey, basically life is pure chaos, and either you're going to flow with it or you're not. And I've already brought that up with Peterson and Taoism and so on and so forth. But it really is. And you've just got to come to grips with, there's so much in my life, even the people that I love, that could be gone tomorrow. Yeah. And, you know, either I'm going to be okay with this and try to live every day as if it might be my last, or try to hold on to this feeling that that won't happen and everything will be good and rosy. But I think with innocence, you know, things, I guess it's an interesting phrase to use, but even as you come through as a kid, you know, you don't know. I mean, we brought up the sexual interactions with Holden and other people like that. As a child, you don't get that. You don't understand it because it's not like, you don't have those hormones running through you yet. And then you start to age and you start having the hormones and you start liking, you know, other people more than just as friends. And you start going through that. And then somebody that you like hurts you somehow. And then, so that's kind of, okay, maybe that's a little loss of innocence there, where, okay, somebody that you thought cared for you maybe doesn't. And okay, well, that's eye-opening. And I think it's a long transition of your loss of innocence. But maybe innocence is as your infant child, you have complete innocence because you know no better. So you're just learning as you go, and as you go through life, you're losing that more and more. Although that can kind of go down another path. But I guess those are some of my thoughts on loss of innocence.
I couldn't have hoped for better commentary on that, because I think that does help me a lot, because I think sexuality does have something to do with it. You know, when you start saying, oh, I want more than just playtime with this person. I think for me, and like you said, like you either say you're okay with it or you're not. Maybe it's just the fact that I'm okay with it. Like I think maybe too okay with it. I don't have Holden struggle at all. And maybe that also helps for my, like, why I'm not empathetic towards him. that probably is like why I shouldn't say helps, but that probably damages my ability to relate to him, because I'm just like, who cares? Yeah, you grow up. You know what I mean? Like it's, and maybe it helps. I mean, I don't have kids of my own. My girlfriend's got a couple kids and I treat them like mine, but they were a little bit older when we started dating. So, you know, like, I don't know. It's hard to say. Maybe I would feel differently if I had a kid, and I just want to preserve. I know that I've heard a lot of parents express that they wish they could have kept their kid at a certain age for forever. For me, I'm like, I've always been excited when the kids, when Kai or Riley, like, do something new or progress or realize something for the first time. It was really cool when I talked with Riley about, like, he finally cared about politics for the first time when the European Union, when they banned memes. And he actually,
yes.
Yeah. And he's like, yeah, dude, that's lame. And I'm just like, yes, it's so lame. Like, I want to have you on the show, you know, like, let's talk about how banning memes is a bad idea, because he has, like, so he's a gamer, right? He plays some video games and he has friends that are over there, and they're talking about how it's impacted them, and like how they like, yeah, I can't display this anymore. Right? You know, and at the moment they're not like mass incarcerating, they're just deleting and you know, it's or whatever, but they're talking about how like the content, you know, and they're like, yeah, we can't do memes anymore. So they get deleted, they get taken down, or you get in a lot of trouble for reviewing them. And they are able to do more if they want to. You know, they could throw me in jail for intellectual property theft and I was just like, oh, right, we can talk about, okay, I'm going down a rabbit hole. But either way, I love talking about him like that with him for the first time. And so I didn't have that like, oh no, my little guy knows politics. Like, I was just like, yeah, like, that's cool. Like, I want to talk about that. Mm-hmm. And so maybe I'm just too okay with it. Like, I have the opposite of Holden's problem versus he's got like a serious problem with it.
Yeah. Here, I'll turn the question back on you though, is now you're an adult, so you look, and I think that's where, as an adult, we always have to try to remember what was it like as a kid. So I don't know if there's any of that moments of like, as you can hear mine yelling up there right now, any moments of time where it was different. I mean, I look back now and it's like, yeah, grow up, come on, get over it. Everything will be fine. You know, even let's say your first girlfriend or boyfriend or somebody, like that first time you get broken up, it's like the world is crumbling upon you as like a 12 or 13 or year old or however old you are, because it's the first time your heart's broken. Well, now you're like, get over it, you know, like there's gonna be plenty more to come from this, and you'll learn, you'll move on. And the longer, you know, it's like any wound, the longer you let it heal, it's going to heal itself. So did you have, I mean, maybe you didn't, there no empathetic times through teenage years or anything that like affected you that was, oh, wow, this is different?
I guess he got me there, because my initial response was like, no, like, you know, just casually thinking about it. Because I think for me, like, they're like, oh, and it turns to wanting sex from somebody before you wanted nothing from somebody. I'm like, well, even babies want something from everybody. And even when you're a little kid, yeah, it's not sex, but you want your play partner to make you happy. And and so for me, I think that usury attitude, you just add hormones to it and becomes a different thing that you're trying to use them for, you know? And so, my initial response was thinking no. But there are several, I guess for me, it's manifest in the form of dreams. That not like visions, but like dreams that I had, goals, things that I wanted to do that I never did and will now never get a chance to do because I'm not in that state anymore. I remember climbing mountains with my family. I have climbed all but 3 of Colorado's 14,000 foot peaks. We were a big mountain climbing family. The only 3 that I haven't climbed, you actually have to have gear to climb. And none of us were bringing up like, you know, pythons and hammers and ropes and whatever. But, you know, I climbed the rest of them. And I remember being a pain in the butt about it. And I always wish that I could, you know, because I'm like, of course you're a kid. You'd rather stay at home, play video games. For me, my obsession was baseball. I just wanted to play baseball and go to the batting cage and hit all the time. And I wasn't able to, I can't get that back. Like, not only like, literally, even though my attitude has improved now that I'm an adult, I regret that being a pain in the butt and being like, do I have to? I don't want to climb. And I miss that time with my family, and it'll never happen because my mom and my dad got divorced. The two brothers that I had in climbing with it, they've got kids now. Mm-hmm. They got a family. It's too busy. And so there really are times like that that are like, you need to enjoy this while you're young because it's not going to happen when you're older.
Right.
And so I guess maybe it's fun. Man, powerful that you asked that, because it does make me think that maybe there is more to this than just, wanting sex all of a sudden.
Right. Yeah. I think there's many different layers on that. Across the way.
Yeah. I remember, so I went on this canoeing trip, and I just had so much fun, and it was with the Boy Scouts. So only my dad could go and my brother but it was so much fun. I just remember being like, man, I can't wait till we grow up and we're all just going to get together and do this all the time, without realizing that you are never going to do this again. There's no chance. I always had a vision. I'm very close with I had two brothers that I was raised with, and then my mom remarried, and actually I got a third brother out of that, Sean, who I am very close to, like a brother now. And so it's not all bad. I gained a brother in that sense, but I'm very close with them. But I always thought when I was growing up, I was like, oh, you know what we're going to do? We're going to break the tradition. We're going to be the ones that we all decide to get a big house together, and we'll all get together and we'll all eat breakfast together, and we'll all have dinners together, and we'll watch TV together. And yeah, we'll go to our separate jobs maybe, but we all come back to the same house. And what a goofy dream that is now. But I won't lie, I still want it.
Yeah.
Like if I were to have the opportunity, if my brothers were to be like, hey, we've all decided to go in on a house, I would sell everything. I'd move to wherever it was in an instant. And so, yeah, it might seem like some pipe dream, and it's goofy. You know what I mean? It would be a weird way to live life for everybody else. My two brothers do not want that. You know what I mean? They've got their kids and their wives, and they're happy with being like, yeah, we're our own family, and I like having my own house for this unit.
Right.
And so I guess there's a part of me then that does have that idealism. They don't want this, but I still do, that holds on to that. Now I've let it go, mm-hmm. but I guess that doesn't make me much better than Holden. He's just not able to let it go, and he's had some traumatic experiences that make it so. I guess I haven't had those traumatic experiences, and I've been able to grow up. But
yeah, I think that's a big thing of becoming an adult, is you realizing that certain things, children are very self-centered. Well, humans are very self-centered. Let's put it that way.
Oh yeah.
As you get older, you realize that you can't have everything you want. So I think that's part of it too, is like you're trying to hold on to everything and make everything perfect. And then the world's changing around you, and you're getting older, and you don't have as much control. And hey, you know what? Maybe, yeah, like your brothers don't want to live with you anymore. Well, that's something you got to deal with. Or, yeah, you mentioned that canoe trip. Geez, I used to go to camp up in Canada, and we used to do canoe trips. Loved them. And I keep saying the last 10 years, I need to go on a canoe trip. Even if it's a 2 to 3 night, type of canoe trip up in Algonquin, that would be great. And I haven't gone. And it probably happen.
Dude, like such a parallel. This canoeing trip was in Canada. It was Boundary Waters, and it was I have always wanted to go back.
Yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous. It's amazing. Especially if you get way out, and there's sometimes you go and you'll see maybe a handful of other people, every day. And then you're on a campsite, maybe on a lake with 2 or 3 campsites, and nobody else is there, which is great. You're out in the middle of nowhere. But I guess those things are a little bit easier, especially when you're a kid and you've got summers off. Those things happen a little bit easier now that you got to work 50% of the year almost. But that's where I guess, yeah, he's not allowing things that change around him. He doesn't want to change with it and let it happen. So I guess that was where it brought back that teenage angst of okay, you're growing up and things are changing. How are you going to deal with this?
Yeah. Well, I've always considered myself more robotic. I think talk about this now, I kind of realize I'm not as robotic as I think,
Chipping away.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, that was there somewhere down in all that. I guess really the only difference is I coped with it better. Mm-hmm. Well, I know we're over that hour mark here. So let's I guess to wrap up, is there anything that you think we missed? I think there's a million things that I could talk about in this book that I know we missed, but anything that you wanted to make sure that we got to?
No, I think we covered a lot. I mean, there's a lot of, I would say, anybody that hasn't read this, read this book. It's one of those that I've always heard and always been in the background, and okay, maybe one day I'll read it. And we named our son Holden, and somebody said, "Oh, after Catching the Rye," I'm like, "Nope, never read it, so I have no idea." I'm like, and a couple people asked me that. I'm like, "All right, I got to find out who this Holden character is, so at least I know." Like from there, but I think it was a quick read. Every page you keep turning, and there's something new. And J.D. Salinger does a great job of getting you in the head of this kid, and you will probably love and hate him at the same time throughout the book. And also you want to reach through the pages and just kind of shake him and say, "Come on, man, wake up, get over this," because you can see, especially the way he talks and looks at everything. You're so intelligent, you've got a leg up on so many people, but you just can't get out of your own damn way. And maybe we've all felt that way at times as well. So you can kind of bring that back of you can't get out of your own way. And sometimes that's what needs to happen. So no, nothing specific, but great read, loved it. And next time I won't wait until the week before to try to finalize the book.
Yeah, but it's cool that it's fresh. I actually don't disapprove of that method when you're going to discuss it, especially with a book this short. It's not, if you procrastinate to the point where you're like, well, I'm not going to be able to read it, that's a problem. But if you're like, well, it's all fresh in my brain now. Mm-hmm. I know there's a few times, with Liberty's First Crisis, I read it immediately. And then you guys bring up something and I'll be like, oh yeah. I totally would have forgotten. And it's funny what a difference a month makes. But yeah, it's, for me, there's one more symbol that I kind of want to end on, and that's the hat. How he buys this goofy hat that he likes wearing, but he wears it differently depending on the circumstances that he's in. Sometimes he talks about it's a goofy hunter hat. It's the one with the big ear flaps and the brim. Yep. And he's like, he bought it. And it's funny because you think, oh, this is a moment of spontaneity. This is actually him being genuine for once. But the thing is, he wears it differently depending on the social situation that he's in. And it really just goes to show how he doesn't fit in, because no matter what, when you're wearing that hat, you're just not going to fit in. You are aiming to not fit in when you wear a big goofy hat. Ask Dan Berman, when you this is just kind of something that you do, and it's really a motif that he doesn't ever say it, but he just says it really screams, keep away. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to engage, and so it really is just people repellent, right? To wear this big goofy hat. And I think he doesn't know that. I think something deep within his brain knows that, but I don't think he's consciously aware of it. I think it's a subconscious thing that he's doing. Yeah. And it happens throughout the whole book. But the thing is, he wears the hat differently and thinks he's being genuine. But the whole time, everybody wears different hats. And I think that there's something to be said that says, that's not you not being genuine. That's just you understanding, reading the room, understanding the situation, and saying, yeah, we all wear different hats, and right now it's appropriate for me to act this way. He talked about a preacher at one point in the book, and he's like, this guy was just so phony, and talking about his relationship with God. And the preacher was a very real sounding person, talked about his mistakes, talked about good and bad stuff, talked about his relationship with God the whole time. And the preacher would wear a hat essentially to say yes, now I'm speaking to a group of colleagues, so this would be an inappropriate time to talk about my pitfalls. And really to just say, it makes you question, is it inauthentic to just be the same person in every social situation? Or do you just get good at reading the room and saying, this is how my personality works in this situation? And I think that I really want to encourage Holden in that direction, to just say it's not that these people are being disingenuous, you're at a rally. And I think that there's something that says is it is not disingenuous to try, and I think this is where it touches me specifically, because I am a unifier and I am a peacemaker. And so people will be like, oh, what? So you just shut up about your anarchy, libertarianism, as soon as like your big statist aunt is in the room. And I'm like, well, yeah, I don't go as hard on it because I want her to feel comfortable with me, and I want to be able to talk about it without being all up in her face about it.
Right.
And so with me, my statist aunt, I'm not going to be like, oh, you statists. And it's like, what? So, and some people would say I am inauthentic because I do that, but that's not it at all. I'm just using tact. And I think tact can be a genuine thing to do, can be a very authentic thing. I am a very tactful person. I don't like to hurt people. It's not because I'm inauthentic as soon as it comes to hurting somebody. It's just the authentic part of me doesn't want to hurt other people's feelings. I don't. And so it's, I think that is the part for me where I just feel the worst for him, that he just can't grapple with that. And he thinks that people have changed when really they just reveal who they are differently in a different circumstance. Mm-hmm. And I think I guess for me, the reason I want to close on that is because it's like, yeah, we might all wear different hats on different situations, but that doesn't mean you're not genuine. It's the same hat. You just wear it differently. I am still a libertarian with my statist aunt in the room. I just butter it up differently. I just pitch it differently. I guess is maybe the best way I'll say it. I just am I work on her differently than anybody else. Now, my statist aunt is totally hypothetical. Everybody in my family and extended family at this point has got the liberty bug, but it's because I've got one that's still registered Republican but votes Libertarian. She just likes to vote in the primaries, and another who is Democrat for life. I haven't reached her yet. Forget about her. Everybody else in my extended family has caught the bug, and the reason is because it's not because I'm disingenuous with them. It's just because I talk to them where they're at, and I think We're Libertarians is good at doing that, and I think that that's something that we should encourage. I guess the reason I want to leave on that is because that's a good takeaway from the book, is to just be, it is not being phony to be a nice person to people, right. To care about them. Now, let's talk about the next book, man. It's you and I, for all I know, it might just be you and I, but what other books you got in mind?
No, I did not come prepared for that, Hody. So if you've got a couple, why don't you throw them out there and I'll look at the list here.
All right, let's see here. Okay.
And I do like what you were just saying there about you can't come at somebody with a bullhorn. I mean, that is almost like a Holden tactic, I would say. This is the way I believe, so I'm telling you, and I'm telling you the way that I want to tell you.
Right. And
push people away.
Right. And I think, he doesn't want people messing with his kid brother's glove. Well, yeah, of course. I think everybody relates to holding on that, but to just be like, I'm going to wildly punch you and I'm not going to talk about it. It's like, I think he could very easily be like, hey, I had a little brother that died. That's his glove. Can you just please not mess with it? He even talked about it at the end after the loony bin, even hating him the whole time. He's like, I really missed Ackley and Statler, like his roommates. You know what I mean? Like, even though he got in a physical fist fight with them, you know what I mean? He kind of I hope that at the end it's like the ice breaking a little bit to being like, I miss. He doesn't understand why he misses them,
right?
But that he does miss them, to be like, I really. Because to understand that they weren't bad guys when they would play keep away with the glove. They didn't know what they were doing. But right. He also didn't explain to them what they were doing. He was just like, I'm going to punch you in the face if you do that. Well, that's not going to make college goof-off stop. You know what I mean? No. So that's an effective means of trying to make them stop. All right, well, let's talk about genres. What are you feeling these days? We just finished a book on capitalism and politics last month. And so I could talk about economy and politics all day, but we should probably steer away from that. We just talked about an American classic. That was our first time, but I'm glad we did it, man. Makes me want to do more. But just talk about classics. We kind of did a Mount Rushmore already in the Libertarian Mind, as well as the Road to Serfdom. I do want to get to Slaughterhouse 5, but that's a classic, as well as written by somebody who is politically minded like us. But maybe we should save that. I don't know. We could do self-help. We kind of started off with there. We haven't gone back to there for a while. If you want to talk about like self-improvement.
I'm good with that. I've been listening to some of your and Dale's and also just some John Maxwell leadership podcast stuff. And it's something to kind of get my mind focused again. So I'm good with that. If there's something, I'm trying to scan through these books here. There's so many on this.
Yeah, I'm looking at them as well. Well, tell you what, maybe we can even talk about it just in the book club and off the air. I don't want necessarily everybody listening to us be like, well, in fact, I can end this and we can still talk about it, but just find it later. But we'll join us, the We're Libertarians Book Club. If you're listening to this, it means you're a Patreon donor. We appreciate that. So yeah, follow us on the book club. We're on Goodreads. That's how we do all our business. And you can be a part of these. Patreon or no, if you read the books, or even if you feel like talking about whatever the subject matter of the book is. I've always been surprised at how people that didn't read the book still lend some value to the conversation. In this case, Hadley, I'm glad it was just you and me because I had a lot to say. And man, you got me feeling again. You made me feel.
I made some impact here.
Yeah. But let me go ahead and end this video, and we'll talk about it afterwards. But again, thank you so much, Hadley. Good talking to you again.
Good talking to you, Hody. Have a good one.
Bye.